The first scream didn't sound like anger. It sounded like confusion. Ha! Shaky, the kind of cry a toddler makes when the world suddenly feels unsafe. Heads turned instantly. Row after row of first-class passengers lifted their eyes from laptops, champagne flutes, and noise-canceling headphones. At the front of the cabin, beneath the soft gold glow of overhead lights, a small black toddler stood frozen on the wide leather seat of two. Tears pooled in his eyes. Across from him, a flight attendant leaned forward, her jaw tight, her perfectly styled bun unmoving as her voice sliced through the quiet cabin. "Get out of this seat now." The words hit harder than the tone. The toddler's lip trembled. "I want sit," he whimpered, gripping the armrest with tiny fingers. The attendant's expression didn't soften. "This section is for first-class passengers." A few people shifted uncomfortably. 3 rows back, a man in a gray hoodie bolted upright. "That's my son." He moved quickly down the aisle, heart pounding. His name was Marcus Reed, 34, software engineer, founder of a cybersecurity startup that had just secured a massive federal contract. But in that moment, he was just a father. He scooped a little boy into his arms. "It's okay, Jed. Daddy's here." Jaden clung to him, burying his face into his father's shoulder. The attendant crossed her arms. "Sir, you need to take him back to your assigned cabin." Marcus blinked. "Our assigned cabin," he repeated calmly. "Yes, the economy boarding is complete. You shouldn't be here." A businessman near the aisle gave Marcus a quick once over the hoodie, the sneakers, the travel backpacked hand looked away. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out 2 boarding passes. "Seat 2A and 2B, he said evenly. "First class." The attendant didn't take them. "I already checked the manifest. There's no read in first class." Jaden sniffled. Marcus kept his voice steady, then checked again. Her patience snapped. "I don't need to check again. You need to move." The air thickened. Passengers pretended not to stare, but they were staring. Jaden shifted, trying to climb back into the seat. The attendant stepped forward quickly. "I said get out of that seat." And then her hand struck his arm. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't brutal, but it was sharp. Public, loud enough to echo. The cabin went dead silent. Jaden's cry exploded into hysterical sobbing. Marcus froze. For one split second, the world narrowed into the sound of his son crying and the imprint of a stranger's hand on tiny brown skin. "Did you just hit my child?" he asked quietly. The attendant straightened. "I was preventing him from damaging property." "He's 2, Marcus said. Phones slowly rose. A woman across the aisle gasped. "Oh my God!" Jaden trembled in Marcus's arms. "You do not touch my son," Marcus said, his voice still controlled but shaking underneath. "Sir, lower your voice," the attendant snapped. "You're causing a disturbance," a man near the window muttered. "This is ridiculous." But he didn't clarify which part he meant. Marcus held up the boarding passes again. "Scan them," the attendant hesitated. The silence grew heavier. Finally, the lead purser emerged from the galley. "What's going on?" "This passenger is refusing to comply," the attendant said quickly. Marcus handed the purser the tickets. The purser scanned them, paused, scanned them again. "To A and to B," he confirmed slowly. "They are seated correctly." A ripple of whisper spread through the cabin. The attendant's face drained of color. "That must be an upgrade mistake," she insisted. "It's not," Marcus replied. "I paid $4,300 for these seats." That caught attention. The businessman who had dismissed him earlier looked up sharply. Jaden's crying softened into hiccups. From 2 rows back, a college student named Elena held her phone steady. She had captured everything: the yelling, the strike, the boarding passes. The purser turned toward the attendant. "Step into the galley now." She hesitated but obeyed. Marcus sat down slowly, settling Jaden into his lap. He kissed his son's hair. "You're safe," he whispered, but his hands were shaking. He wasn't shaking because of anger. He was shaking because this wasn't new. This was the 3rd time in 2 years someone had questioned whether he belonged in a premium cabin, but it was the first time someone had put hands on his child. The plane took off 20 minutes late. By the time it reached cruising altitude, Elena had uploaded the video. The caption read, "Flight attendant slaps black toddler in first class after saying they don't belong." Within 30 minutes, it had 120,000 views. By landing, it was over 2 million. The internet expletive news outlets contacted Elena before the plane even touched down. Meanwhile, Marcus sat quietly, staring out the window at the clouds. Jaden eventually fell asleep in his arms. A woman seated beside Marcus leaned closer. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I saw everything. You handled that with more composure than most people could." Marcus gave a tired smile. "If I react the wrong way, I become the headline." She nodded slowly, and she understood exactly what he meant. When the plane landed, airport security was waiting, but not for Marcus, for the attendant. Passengers exited whispering. Cameras were already outside the gate. "Sir, are you pressing charges? Was this racially motivated? How do you respond to the video going viral?" Marcus paused just long enough to say one sentence. "No child should have to prove they belong." Then he walked away. That night, the airline released a statement. "We deeply regret the incident." The attendant was placed on administrative leave, but the video kept spreading. Celebrities reposted it. Civil rights advocates demanded termination. Parents shared similar stories, and something unexpected happened. Former airline employees began speaking out. Anonymous posts surfaced describing internal cultures where certain passengers were profiled for upgrades, fraud. Training slides leaked online. One slide read, "Be vigilant about misplaced passengers in premium cabins." The comment section beneath the viral video shifted from outrage to investigation. Marcus watched it all unfold from his hotel room. Jaden slept peacefully beside him, unaware of the storm swirling online. Marcus's phone rang. It was the airline's CEO. "I want to personally apologize," the CEO said. Marcus listened. "We are conducting a full internal investigation." "That's good," Marcus replied evenly. "We would like to offer compensation." Marcus exhaled slowly. "It's not about the money." A pause. "What would you like to see happen?" Marcus thought about Jaden's scream, about the eyes on them, about the hesitation before checking the ticket. "Mandatory bias training," he said. "Public transparency, and a policy that prohibits physical contact with children under any circumstance." The CEO agreed. 2 days later, they stood side by side at a press conference. Cameras flashed. Reporters filled the room. The airline announced immediate reforms. The attendant's employment was terminated. Marcus stepped to the podium. "My son won't remember this," he said calmly, "but other children will. So let us build an industry where they never have to feel like they don't belong." The clip went viral again. This time, not because of violence, because of dignity. Weeks passed. Airlines across the country reviewed policies. Training modules were updated. Jaden's story became a case study in corporate seminars. But the most powerful moment came months later. Marcus boarded another flight. First class again. Jaden walked beside him confidently, holding a small toy airplane. A new flight attendant knelt down to Jaden's eye level. "Well, hello there, sir," she said warmly. "Welcome aboard," Jaden grinned. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. No suspicion. No interrogation. Just welcome. As they settled into their seats, Marcus looked around the cabin. People smiled at Jaden. One passenger even waved. The engines roared to life. The plane lifted off. Jaden pressed his face to the window, eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, we're flying high." Marcus smiled. "Yes, we are." And this time, no one questioned it. No one demanded proof. No one raised a hand. Outside, the clouds stretched endlessly beneath them. Inside, something subtle had shifted. Change didn't come from shouting. It came from refusing to be silent. From holding boarding passes steady. From staying composed when the world expected fury. From protecting a child's dignity in front of strangers. As the plane climbed higher, Marcus leaned back in his seat. Jaden's laughter filled the cabin. And for the first time since that awful moment, the sound didn't echo with fear. It echoed with freedom. They belonged, and everyone on that plane knew it. But the story didn't fade after that second flight. It evolved. 3 months after the incident, Marcus received an invitation from a National Aviation Safety Board. They wanted him to sit on a newly formed advisory council focused on passenger equity and in-flight conflict prevention. At first, he hesitated. He wasn't an activist. He wasn't a politician. He was a tech founder who liked building systems, solving problems quietly behind screens. But every time he replayed that moment, the raised voice, the SWAT, Jaden's terrified cry, he knew this wasn't something he could ignore. So he accepted. The first meeting was held in Washington, D.C., inside a sterile conference room filled with executives, regulators, and consultants. Charts were projected, policies were debated, words like liability, exposure, and brand mitigation floated across the table. Marcus listened patiently. Then he spoke. "You're treating this like a PR issue," he said calmly. "It's a systems design flaw." The room grew still. When frontline employees are trained to question presence instead of confirmed tickets, bias becomes procedural. If your first instinct is suspicion, that instinct will surface under stress. A senior executive frowned. "We don't train suspicion. You train vigilance without clarity," Marcus replied. "And when clarity is missing, people rely on assumption." Silence followed. Then someone slowly nodded. That was the turning point. Instead of vague diversity workshops, Marcus proposed measurable reforms. Randomized audit reviews of passenger interactions, clear, step-by-step escalation protocols, a requirement that any seating dispute be verified electronically before verbal confrontation. No physical contact unless there was immediate safety risk. Data tracking for complaint patterns. If tech companies could detect cybersecurity threats in milliseconds, airlines could detect bias trends too. Within 6 months, the Advisory Council's recommendations were implemented across 4 major carriers. Not because of outrage, because of metrics. Meanwhile, Jaden turned 3. He didn't remember the incident, but Marcus did. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit beside Jaden's bed and think about how easily things could have escalated. If he had yelled, if he had reacted physically, if someone had misinterpreted his tone. He knew how those stories ended, but this one hadn't. Because he chose control, because witnesses chose to record, because strangers chose to speak up. One afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected email. It was from the former flight attendant. The subject line read, "I owe you an apology." He stared at it for a long time before opening it. Her message was not defensive, it was not legalistic, it was human. She admitted she had acted on assumption. She admitted she had been conditioned to spot irregularities. She admitted she reacted before verifying. "I am not asking for forgiveness," she wrote. "But I want you to know I have enrolled in counseling and implicit bias education. I am trying to understand why I saw what I thought I saw." Marcus read it twice. Then he closed his laptop. He didn't respond immediately. Forgiveness wasn't something you typed casually, but something about the honesty in her message mattered. 2 days later, he wrote back, "I appreciate the acknowledgement. Growth matters. I hope you continue it." That was all. He didn't post it online. He didn't share it with reporters. Some things were meant to stay private. A year after the incident, Marcus and Jaden boarded yet another flight. This time, something unexpected happened at the gate. A man approached Marcus hesitantly. "Are you the father from that video?" Marcus nodded cautiously. The man swallowed. "I was on that flight. I didn't say anything, I just watched. I've regretted it ever since." Marcus studied him. "I should have spoken up," the man continued. "I'm sorry." Marcus offered a small, steady smile. "You can't change that moment," he said, "but you can change the next one." The man nodded, visibly relieved. When they boarded, the cabin felt different again. Not because of policy, because of awareness. A young flight attendant greeted Jaden with a cheerful salute. "Captain Jaden ready for takeoff?" Jaden giggled. Marcus buckled him in and glanced around. He noticed something subtle. Attendants were checking devices before approaching passengers, confirming seat numbers quietly, smiling more intentionally. The industry had shifted. Not perfectly, not completely, but measurably. As the plane taxied, Jaden tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "That yes, why people clap when plane land?" Marcus chuckled softly. "Because sometimes landing safely feels like a victory." Jaden nodded as if that made perfect sense. Marcus looked out the window. He realized something. That first incident had been about belonging, but everything that followed had been about accountability. Belani says you have the right to be somewhere. Accountability ensures no one questions that right unfairly. The plane lifted into the sky. Clouds stretched wide and endless beneath them. Jaden pressed his palm to the glass. "We so high." Marcus smiled. "Yes, we are." And this time, the altitude didn't feel like status. It felt like progress. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady. a system adjusted, a policy rewritten, a mindset reconsidered. All because one father refused to move when told he didn't belong. All because a toddler's cry echoed louder than silence. As the cabin lights dimmed and passengers settled into the hum of cruising altitude, Marcus leaned back. He wasn't thinking about the viral video anymore. He wasn't thinking about headlines. He was thinking about the future Jaden would grow into. One where first class was just a seat number. One where verification came before accusation. One where a child's presence sparked curiosity, not suspicion. Jaden yawned and rested his head against Marcus's arm. The engines roared softly. The aircraft cut through open sky. And somewhere between departure and arrival, between outrage and reform, between assumption and awareness, something had changed. Not just for them, but for everyone who would board after.